Hello everybody, this is International Master Otanu and you are watching How Chess Masters Think. How to find the right plan if you do not have a clear-cut target against your opponent. Till now, we have been watching videos where the zone of action was very clearly defined. But there are situations where you don't clearly find any weakness in your opponent's camp. So let us go through a game played between two very great players of 1950s, Effim Geller and Paul Keres. This match was played in Soviet Union. It was the USSR championship, and as you may be aware that Soviet Union was a very strong chess playing nation during those times, and these chess players were almost the best in the world during their peak, uh, when they were at their peak. Well, looking at the position, white Effim Geller has almost a very minute advantage, but when this position was reached, it seems the position is equal. Pieces are equal, pawns are equal, and apart from that, even the queens are exchanged. Both the sides have an open line. The black's rook is occupying C line. It is attacking the C4, and white's rook is occupying the D line. However, there are small imbalances or differences in the position. As we can see, white has two bishops in a fairly open position. Black's knight on B8 is still one move away from development. And when it does develop, it leaves the D7 square, vulnerable for penetration by white's rook. So the knight cannot develop. White rook would invade via rook d7, and white does have two bishops. And of course there is a very small factor, that is the rook on a1 is also attacking the a7 pawn, so it's more active than the rook on a8. So thanks to the doubled pawn, normally doubled pawns are weak, but they also give the player an additional line, and here white has an additional a file to play. So in this position it's white to move, and white played something very simple but very effective. Whenever you don't find any clear-cut plan, just count on your blessings. What do you have which your opponent does not have? Here white has two bishops and a very good d file to penetrate. So the first move white played was bishop e1. He preserved this bishop so that the knight cannot capture the bishop. And also at this moment the rook is unable to capture this bishop because there is rook d8 checkmate along the back rank. It's very elementary, but for those who are not aware of these tactics, just remember the king cannot come up because it's shut off by its own pawn. It cannot move out of the chessboard. So whenever you have a weakness, the king is stuck on the back rank and the pawns in front of the king, you must take care that the last rank is controlled by your pieces. Here black played king f8. Now black is threatening rook c4. And white played something very simple but very effective. He played rook d4, supporting the bishop, keeping a pressure on the knight, as well as preparing to double the rooks. So lots of ideas with a very simple move. Well, just see, the knight on c6 is a desirable move, but now it cannot be played because the e4 knight hangs. It is, well, the bishop supports knight right now, but knight c6 would simply block the bishop, so the e4 knight would be lost. Black plays king e7. Well, he mainly plans to develop his knight. The knight was unable to develop. And after removing this knight on e4, black can also contemplate playing knight c6. White played something very simple, another simple and very effective move, that is rook d1. Not only bringing the rook to action, but stopping knight d7 because that would be captured by the rook on d4. Black played rook c7, once again threatening to play, well, knight to d7. White played another very simple move, that is knight e5. So just observe, every move improves white's pieces as well as stops black's normal plan. Black wanted to play knight d7. Once again, it cannot be played because this knight, this rook and this rook, they control the d7 square. Now black was fed up. Black played f6. He wants to remove this knight so that the next move after the knight moves away, black can develop. But white was relentless. He did not oblige and he played another very wonderful move, that is bishop d3. So this is a very small in-between move. That means before moving my knight away, I will pressurize, I will threaten something else. So here, just observe, black can capture the knight. So he leaves the full knight en prise without any support. But then white would, and this pawn would attack the rook. But then white had planned he would capture the knight. So both sides have won a knight, and now these pawns are miserable, very weak. If black wants to punish white, he has to take bishop e4, winning the exchange. But after white takes bishop e4, this rook is trapped. The only way to defend would be knight c6, but then white would play a beautiful move based on pin. So just notice, white is still one exchange down, but by pinning the knight on c6, he is threatening to capture the whole knight with the pawn and emerge ahead in material. But then he has to take into account a very beautiful defense by black, that is rook to d8. It's a wonderful move, unpinning the knight, and now white doesn't have, so white doesn't have time to capture this because black would capture the whole rook. And also white does not have time to capture this because black would then recover the rook with the attacked knight and remain one exchange up. But then there is another good move, rook c1. So once again, this knight is pinned and attacked by the pawn. So white is likely to win this knight and the game very soon. So this was a wonderful sequence, forced moves, but the moves were very beautiful. So look at this position. Instead of retreating the knight, he opts to counterattack, and while opting for this move, he had to foresee the whole sequence of moves from fe5, rook e4, sacrificing the exchange, and after giving away the exchange, he attacks the rook, pins the knight, and once again pins the knight, and only then he can win. So it was a very beautiful sequence. Of course, Paul Keres saw this and he played a very simple move, that is, he retreated the knight. His idea was very simple. He is attacking this knight, and if the knight moves away, Paul Keres would simply exchange and exchange, and after that play knight to c6. He would develop his piece and it would be almost equal. Both sides have brought out their pieces, so both sides have reasons to be optimistic and happy. But now, in this position, white played another very brilliant move, that is, instead of retreating, he saw that these two rooks are actually indirectly attacking the knight. So in order to attack the knight, he has to remove this bishop. So he captured this pawn, allowing black to capture the knight so that he can capture the knight. So white remains one pawn up, but black had seen one move deeper and he trapped the rook behind the lines. So it was a wonderful sequence which black saw, trapping white's rook, but white had seen one move deeper and he simply gave away this exchange once again. So in this position, white is one pawn up. By giving away a rook for a bishop, he is 2 pawns up for an exchange. So materially both are equal. A bishop and 2 pawns is almost like 5 points, which is equivalent to a rook. So materially it's equal, but the two bishops have lots of open diagonals and they are working in harmony. So Effim Geller, who was one of the leading players of his times, he visualized and he judged this position to be totally winning for white. The remaining moves are also very instructive. We'll go through the moves very quickly. Black attacked the bishop, white supported, and black brought out his knight. So after a long time, the knight does come out, but then white centralized his king. Black exchanges the rook. In a simplified position, it is bishop and 2 pawns against the rook, but both the bishops are now finally in action. Look at the power of two bishops in harmony. The bishop attacks the e5 pawn, black defends with the king, white plays check, black moves, still defending the pawn, and white attacks the pawn once again with this bishop. And not only that, the bishop has a very long diagonal to attack. Now after exchange, these two bishops are so active that, well, black defended the g7 with the knight, and then before going for the kill, white plays bishop e5 check, black moves to d5, and that leaves the knight pinned. So white captured the pawn on g7. We have to observe that had the king moved to d7, white would have played f5 and once again captured the g pawn after removing the knight. A point to be noted is, if at once f5, black could resist by playing knight f4 check. And on king f3, something like rook f1 check, there would be some resistance. But here, first white controlled the f4 square with the bishop, and when black played king d5, white simply captured the g7 pawn. Now the knight is pinned. Black played rook c8 attacking the g8 bishop. White exchanged, and in this position white has bishop and 3 connected passed pawns for a rook, which is absolutely win. But let us see how the game finished. Geller played in a masterly fashion. He played bishop c3, supporting the b pawn, as well as threatening to push the king side pawns. Black played king d5. White started pushing the passed pawns. Black played a5. White played ba, and black played a very simple combination. He gave an exchange with the hope that black's passed pawn would land and promote. But this is a very simple. There was a pawn race. White played h5 and black played king e6. Had black competed in the race, white would play h6. After a3, h7, a2, white would have promoted. And after black promotes, white had a very simple tactics, that is c4. It's called discovered attack. Just notice the queen, after landing on h8, actually is on the same diagonal of the black's queen. So c4 removes the pawn cover, and after king c4, white would win the queen and the game. So this was white's idea. So after this position, in this position, black goes king e6, trying to somehow get to this point and block black's pawn. White played king e3, and even white had come inside the zone. We all know when the pawns fight against a lone king, our objective should be to somehow enter into this box, the green box in green line. The king is inside the magic box or the box of the passed pawn, and in this absolutely winning position, black resigned. So it was a very nice, simple game which taught us that whenever we don't have any clear-cut target, we have to count on our blessings, what we have. In this position, Effim Geller saw he had two bishops and his opponent's knight was unable to come out. Once he spotted that, he made use of every move to ensure the opponent's knight does not develop freely, and later he utilized his two bishops very effectively, and you saw he won all the kingside pawns and finally the game. So friends, in life, when you don't have any clear-cut objective or motive, just count on blessings and work on those. I hope you liked today's video. Thanks for watching. We'll meet again in the next episode with very important lessons of chess and life. Goodbye.